Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:07. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. It's Tuesday. It's the 5th day of August. And I don't know, Julie Gunlock, I'm thinking we should just interview AI creatures the rest of the day and be a professional journalist like Jim Acosta. What do you think?
God, that's so creepy. Yeah, hey, saves time.
Does Jim Acosta realize that he's just sort of indicated to everyone that he could be replaced by AI and nobody would notice, really?
No one. Well, it would improve his show. That's one thing people might notice.
How do we know Jim Acosta isn't already AI, except for the lack of I in Jim Acosta? He would have to be artificial lack of intelligence, I think, would be. We will get to Jim Acosta's atrocious journalism coming up a little later. Also at 6:05, Hans von Spakovsky will chime in on the Texas redistricting drama that now has Democrats fugitives of the law of the Lone Star State. It's 7:05. We told you his story yesterday. Luis Fernandez, a Virginia father who's been banned from his pool in Fairfax County for calling a boy a boy. It's 7:35. Nick Minnock on that secret Loudoun County School Board meeting yesterday. 8:05. An old friend of this program, Lee Smith, one of the best investigative journalists on the Russiagate hoax. He wrote a book about it. It was turned into a movie. Been working with Lee since literally the first day this story broke. Lee and I were working together at the time when the story broke, and the publication we were working for at the time refused to allow us to cover the story. But thankfully, we both had other outlets to pursue, and Lee Smith will join us about the latest development. Attorney General Pam Bondi announcing that there is, in fact, a grand jury now being impaneled to look at potential criminal indictments. And then at 8:35, Scott Smith, who knows a little thing, too, about the Loudoun County School Board. We'll get him to chime in on what they're up to behind closed doors. That's Julie Gunlock, as I've already alluded, inferred, implied. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, do you have coffee yet? I'm only I'm an inch down in my mug right now.
I'm about
Usually
that,
I'm
too.
like a good cup and a half in already.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm at the same level. We need to chug this.
Yeah. Should we just, you chug first because it's hard to talk while you're chugging. Look at you go.
There we go.
Are you sure that's not a Celsius disguised as
No,
as a
I'm
high
out.
noon?
No, I'm I'm out of Celsius this week.
The kids all drank them all when they found out there could be vodka laced in one of them.
No, I just haven't gotten any.
So it's almost like the Island of Lost Toys over there, Island of Misfit Toys over at Substack, where you've got all of these formerly high-paid journalists from networks like Joy Reid and Jim Acosta, as I just mentioned, who's interviewing AI bots to affirm his position on gun control, to Jen Rubin from the Washington Post. And basically anybody gets fired, they end up creating a Substack. Substack is a website for people where they can basically create their own web page with a membership base. You can write things, articles, do videos, do podcasts.
It's a million little papers. It's a million little opinion sections, editorial sections of newspapers.
And it's like having a membership page or a VIP page where you can pay more. And I've got a Substack, by the way, full disclosure, because I've got so many things going on.
I just started one.
Did you? Oh, I'm so glad.
Yes.
Why didn't you tell me?
Well, it's so funny. I wrote sort of an intro saying I may update this, I may not. And I wrote like 3 things that I haven't updated in like a couple weeks. I just started it to add recipes and things because I cook so much and I never write anything down. So I thought it would be a good way to chronicle.
I'm going to find it and I'm going to to subscribe to it, and then I'm going to demand you.
But you have one too, right?
I do. It's just because I have so many different things. I wanted one place where all my content is sort of funneled through and stuff and things like that. And also, I like to write. I don't write much anymore because my job at Town Hall is more video based now, and I do like to write columns. So I write about stuff. Usually, I'm writing about personal stuff. Like I wrote about my all the stuff in my life this year with my family and things, and it's nice. It's nice to have an outlet. Anyway, long story short. Here's a good breakdown. We got Taylor Lorenz from Washington Post, Ryan Lizza from Politico, Jennifer Rubin, Washington Post, Spencer Ackerman from the Daily Beast, Joy Reid from MSNBC, Jim Acosta from CNN, and now Terry Moran of ABC News. They all have banished themselves to Substack. And by the way, they're probably doing just fine. I've taken a look at the stats on Jim Acosta's page. Jim Acosta...
How is that possible?
Here's how it's possible. Jim Acosta is a martyr for the cause. Right. Jim Acosta has this profile now amongst the wackadoodle anti-Trump left that he was fired from CNN because of pressure from Donald Trump.
Everyone who gets fired now it's somehow Trump's fault, right?
Trump
Colbert had nothing to do with it. He's losing billions for the network. He gets fired. Trump's fault. Terry Moran, right. Trump's fault. Yep.
That's right. Yep. And so they create this persona about themselves. It's like Jim Acosta's views is so dangerous that even CNN had to silence him. But if you pay him $5 a month, you'll get his revealed insights on all things Trump. And it works. He's making coin over there.
It works. I will just really quickly. It works kind of on our side too. I've seen people who've gotten canceled, and it's legitimately horrible how they've gotten canceled. And then they go on to write a book, and it's like, okay, they've done just fine. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, and again, this isn't a slam to Substack. It's just we're slamming sort of this trend of these jerks who get fired and they didn't get fired because of journalism. They got fired because they were jerks. Jim Acosta was a jerk. Terry Moran was a jerk.
And I'm professional.
But people like Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and those folks, this is a way for them to actually continue their independent journalism and truly stay independent.
Right.
So it's fine. Substack is fine. And I'm glad you're there. I'm glad I'm there. I think Patrice has started a Substack. Glad she's there. It's all great. It's all great. Let the, free market of ideas. That's a wonderful thing. So, which brings us to Terry Moran's latest revelation. We got two crazy things going on over at Substack over the last 2 days. One is the Jim Acosta thing I've been referring to that we'll get to later, where he literally, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I keep alluding to it. He interviewed an AI-generated, imagined creation of a young man who was killed in the Sandy Hook shooting, 10 years ago, right? No,
was it Sandy Hook or was it Parkland? It was Sandy Hook.
Oh, was it Parkland? I'm sorry, the Parkland shooting, which was about 10 years ago. So a person gets murdered in a school shooting, and now they had artificial intelligence create what they believe would have been this person had they lived for the last 10 years.
Oh, my God.
And then it's ghoulish. It's absolutely freakishly demonic. Then Jim Acosta interviewed this person about gun control. And of course, anyway, that's the Jim Acosta thing. But then there's this latest thing from Terry Moran, who you'll remember got fired from ABC News. He'd been there for about 20 years because he went insane with a tweet about Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, where he called them evil and, that they were full of bile and all of this stuff. And, shockingly, ABC News decided to fire him.
Also,
Terry Moran.
it wasn't like a one-off. Moran had been going crazy for years. Like, this is clear TDS, and that was just like one of the worst things he had said.
It's true. Although, I'll be honest, I think that Terry Moran really got fired because he said out loud what everybody at ABC News already believes.
Right.
You can't tell me that there's anything that Terry Moran said about Stephen Miller or Donald Trump in his X post that got him fired that George Stephanopoulos would not agree with.
Right.
But see, George is just better at BSing everybody and pretending like he's unbiased and pretending like he's an objective journalist. And I guess if you're really good at pretending and lying, like Jake Tapper, you can keep your job. Terry Moran let it out that he hated Trump and hated Stephen Miller, even though all of us could see that from his work, and for that he got fired. Well, yesterday, or 2 days ago actually, he revealed on his Substack some more truths about ABC News and about how biased that newsroom is. We'll share that with you in a moment. It's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So Terry Moran, trying to build up his base there on his Terry Moran Substack page, has decided to start revealing things. He got fired because he openly displayed his hatred for Trump, Stephen Miller. And, of course, I always want to remind you that when they express their disdain for Trump, they're really expressing their disdain for you. Because if Trump is so evil and you support him, well, what does that say about you, right? And, of course, ABC News can't let the world know exactly how hate-filled their journalists are. And so Terry let it out of the bag. Terry's fired. Now, Terry takes to Substack. Were we biased, he asks? Yes, almost inadvertently, I'd say. ABC News has the same problem so many leading cultural institutions do in America, a lack of viewpoint, diversity. And then he went on to talk about how when he started at ABC News in 1997, it was run by all white men. And he said, and then we started having diversity, and that was a great thing. Brought in people from different races and genders and perspectives, and it helped them look at the news in a different way. He said, for me, the job got a lot more interesting and more fun. But there was one way ABC did not change. It did not diversify. It is no secret. There are hardly any people who supported Donald Trump at ABC News or the other corporate legacy mainstream media networks, and this is bound to impact coverage, not so much out of malevolent bias. That's the cartoon version peddled by Trump, Brendan Carr, and online MAGA, but more out of what is a kind of deafness. See, they don't populate their newsroom with anyone who supports Donald Trump, but it's not because they're bad. It's not because they're trying to harm Trump. It's just they're deaf. They don't hear those other perspectives, so you can't blame them for it. But by the way, I'd love for any corporate CEO to try to get away with that under the DEI rules that they set up for themselves or any other corporation, to just say, oh, gosh, I wasn't being racist or sexist. It was just, these are the people I'm surrounded by. This is what I'm used to. But that's sort of the excuse Terry Moran is using. He'd say, yes, news teams go out with a microphone and a camera and accost people at Trump rallies, but to me, that often comes off as weirdly anthropological and inaccurate, kind of like trying to understand nature by visiting a zoo. You don't really see a tiger at the zoo, just a version of a tiger. See, he's comparing Trump supporters to zoo animals because he's the honest one in the room. And then there's this, my favorite part. This might sound strange coming from me. The manner of my accelerated departure from ABC News has earned me a reputation in many quarters as a raging anti-Trump firebrand. So be it. I don't take back or regret a syllable of the post I wrote about Stephen Miller and Donald Trump that got me fired. I think it was accurate, fair, and a true description of those men. But inside the newsroom, I had a reputation of trying to get colleagues to see the other side, to walk a mile in the shoes of MAGA, to acknowledge the democratic forces that have made Donald Trump the dominant political figure of our time. So yes, from my perspective, the old news networks are biased. Terry Moran, who still stands by his hate-filled rant against Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the rest of Trump's supporters, actually considers himself to be the most reasonable centrist in the newsroom. He actually went on in an interview to describe himself as a centrist. And so think about that for a minute, Julie. The Terry Moran is the one who's most open to Trump and most open to Trump supporters and was most reasonable to try to push his colleagues to sort of be more compassionate and empathetic to their viewpoints.
Yeah,
Terry Moran
can fantasize about how reasonable he is all he wants, but what he's really exposed here, and this is actually truly frightening, Larry, is let's just, for the sake of argument, say, okay, Terry Moran is the most reasonable person in the newsroom. Larry, he might actually be.
Yeah.
He might actually be. It explains to you just how radical these mainstream news stations are, how radical the corporate media are. Because if Terry Moran is honest here, and he is one of the more reasonable people in the room, I mean, it is frightening to think of the average person in that newsroom and how they think.
Yeah.
They hate you. They hate you more, I think, more than we really realize.
And they deliver the news in such a way, with such a snide tone about Republicans and about Trump supporters, with such a perspective that's already built in when they approach the news, that it is impossible for the viewer or the listener to not pick up on it. They're not stupid. They can hear it. They can see it. And it's, you know what? One step of the way is acknowledging it at the very least, knowing that it's there.
One paragraph after what you read, he says the federal government has no business dictating the editorial content of news coverage. This isn't Viktor Orban's Hungary or the Law and Justice Party of Poland or Putin's Russia in the late 1990s when free voices critical of the Kremlin goes on. Has he missed the last couple years of what we have revealed about how the corporate media was absolutely in bed with the party in power?
Yeah.
The party in power. And trying to, there was a coup, and they were perfectly fine with it.
Yes. And then they protected the aging, decrepit dictator.
They continue to protect them.
Yes. And actually, the federal government does have a role in that. It's actually in the federal code. If you're utilizing the federal broadcast airwaves, they absolutely have a federal, and they're trying to actually make it less biased is all they're trying to do. But that's fine. That's absolutely their perspective, and it's at least good to know that the cards are on the table. Just understand something. Terry Moran was only allowed to tell you the truth about how the ABC News newsroom is after he got fired and went independent. But let's see George Stephanopoulos or Christian Amanpour or any of the or David Muir, the person who moderated a presidential debate, be honest and acknowledge this. It's 5:24.
Coming up, the Department of Justice is launching a grand jury investigation into Russiagate. We'll have the latest. Keep it here. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37. Good morning, and thanks for letting us ride shotgun with you this morning through the news cycle. Starting at 6:05, Hans von Spakovsky will talk about that redistricting drama in Texas. 7:05 brings us that Virginia dad we told you about who's been banned from a local swim club because he called a boy. 7:35, Nick Minnock of Channel 7 on that behind closed doors Loudoun County School Board meeting. 8:05 brings us Lee Smith, one of the lead investigative journalists covering the Russiagate story from its inception. And then at 8:35, Scott Smith, Loudoun County dad, who's had his battles with that school board. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I feel like we've been pretty on top of things with regard to the Russiagate hoax as well from way back at the beginning, and certainly lately with all of the developments that we've had coming out of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, as well as Senator Chuck Grassley's office, who recently has declassified the so-called Durham Annex. That's a bunch of classified material that was sort of an addendum that a bunch of people, members of Congress, members of the Senate, were not allowed to see this thing. That's how classified it was. They gave us details about the origin story of the Russiagate hoax. The bottom line here is, in terms of criminal investigations, we know that referrals have been made to the Justice Department, and it was announced yesterday that Attorney General Pam Bondi has, in fact, given the directive for a grand jury to be impaneled. Now, we've got details, we believe, about where that grand jury might be. We'll get to that in a second. But just so you know, in terms of crimes, it seems pretty clear that at the very least, John Brennan and probably James Comey and James Clapper all perjured themselves and lied under oath to Congress. That's, at the very least, that seems clear. And, by the way, also lied to federal investigators, including the U.S. Attorney, Mr. Durham, who was investigating this. I mean, again, I could be wrong about that. I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, some of these laws are pretty easy to see. And when you say one thing under oath and then it turns out that the evidence suggests the exact opposite, like the use of the Steele dossier for the intelligence community's assessment of the 2016 election, as well as for FISA warrants and other details that were involved in this story, that's perjury. That's a crime. You can't do it. And any normal person would go to jail. Martha Stewart, for God's sake, went to jail for that crime.
Martha Stewart, who was prosecuted by James Comey.
By James Comey. Indeed, indeed. But it goes well beyond that. It's funny when you see political reporters who continue to force themselves to roll their eyes about this and say, well, there's nothing really new here and there's no real evidence. And, oh, ho-hum, are you telling me that Obama and the CIA and the FBI manufactured intelligence to attack an innocent person for political purposes? Where's the crime in that? Yeah. Literally, that's their answer to this. Oh, gosh, is that a crime? Well, if it ain't, it sure should be. Are you kidding me? And they seem perfectly fine with that.
They also seem nervous. John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, they've all been on media doing television interviews recently, and they seem quite nervous, particularly James Clapper. He seemed exasperated. He said he's lawyered up. I think they see this coming. I think they know that they are in real trouble here. So, they are. What they did was terrible. I don't know why we aren't hearing the word coup more. I don't understand why we're not hearing the word treason more. This is about as serious as it gets.
Well, because treason is a very specific constitutionally defined crime. And I'll be honest with you, because I want to always be honest. I don't see treason. I see crimes. I see But again,
and I'm not a lawyer. I get it. I'm not a lawyer, and I could be wrong here, but I don't understand how trying to plan a coup and overturn the duly elected presidency of Donald Trump is. I get it. I'm speaking as someone who's just observing this. Yeah. And you're right. It might not meet the legal threshold for treason, but it just seems treason-y-ish to me. So,
and I also think the reason I think the other reason why you don't hear it that very often is because it is such a charge. I'm not saying that it's not there. I'm just saying I don't see it. But it is such a charge and rises to such a level of unprecedented levels that, personally, I want to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. And only because I lived through 10 years of them saying that Donald Trump was...
I'm not in charge. I'm going to say treason all I want.
Here's Molly Hemingway yesterday affirming what you said in terms of these people who are scared, who look scared, ought to be scared. Take a listen.
What's really important for people to know is that in the last couple of weeks, we have had an explosive amount of information giving brand new details that weren't previously released about how the Obama chiefs and Obama conspired to hide real information, showing that, yes, Russia did what it always did, but it didn't really have any effect, and it wasn't done on behalf of a particular candidate. You might remember that we spent years with the false claim that it was done to benefit Trump. We then had also that they manufactured intelligence and immediately leaked it to compliant media people. And then they had people within their agencies fighting so hard to keep these falsehoods and lies from getting out. And they were threatened with their jobs. They were told there was secret intelligence. We also learned what this supposed secret intelligence was. I mean, just absolutely explosive stuff that's brand new and that really does show that there was a very bad conspiracy. And so this investigation is good, and the people who were involved in it, which is a lot of the Democrat Party, should be scared.
They should be scared. All right, more on this, including where this grand jury may be impaneled. And I think it ties back to a story that we discussed at length yesterday. The first U.S. attorney now been confirmed for Donald Trump happens to be in Miami, Florida. And we believe there's a connection. We'll share that with you in a moment. It's 5:43.
This is a major development. We told you last week that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, had given permission for a strike force to begin. That's a very specific tool the Justice Department uses on major conspiracies. And we told you then we would know it was getting serious when the grand jury jumped into action. We now know that a grand jury will be impaneled. Most likely, my sources are telling me, it could be in Florida.
John Solomon reporting there with Just the News that his sources tell him that it will most likely be in Florida. And we mentioned yesterday and talked about it quite a bit with Joe DeGeneva that Jason Redding Quinones, the very first U.S. attorney nominated by Donald Trump, was confirmed Saturday night for that district in Miami. He'll be overseeing it, and he does not have the baggage of the Department of Justice from prior administrations. So keep an eye on that. And how did they get to Florida? Well, because many people believe that the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago was connected to this entire story. They were trying to get documents that they believed Donald Trump had. They didn't want him to have it. And those documents revealed a lot of what we've learned here. And by the way, John Solomon would know about that because he was actually working with the National Archive at the behest of Donald Trump to go through a lot of those documents to sort of find out the details of the Russiagate scandal. Things are definitely moving rapidly here in this story. And it sure looks like, if a grand jury has a look at it, especially if it's in the Florida jurisdiction, that we could have indictments handed down. I want to remind you, Lee Smith will be joining us coming up at 8:05. But, you know, it's... Can I show you how people that get their news from other outlets are hearing this same story delivered to them?
Let's hear it. Yeah.
And this is really important because I don't know if you remember when Robert Mueller came back and did not have indictments against Donald Trump or recommendations for impeachment. And by the way, they were accusing Donald Trump of treason back then, working with a foreign government to overthrow the duly elected Democrat process. That's right. And that's what their audience was fed on a daily basis. And they weren't given the entire story. They weren't given the truth. And so when Robert Mueller came up, I don't even remember, but there were a couple of guests on CNN who raised some of the questions about the Steele dossier and about Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS. And I remember one of the TV hosts, may have been Tapper even, saying, "Oh, can you explain who those people are? Because our viewers don't know who they are." See, because they weren't given the facts of the story. And as this now develops, if NBC, MSNBC, NBC News, broadcast, whatever, if they aren't given facts about this and they're only given political perspective about this story, then if indictments come in for James Comey or John Brennan or even an unindicted co-conspirator in Barack Obama, they're going to go flipping nuts, because they haven't been prepared with news about this story. And so they'll truly believe that Donald Trump is engineering some sort of authoritarian action here. Yeah. It is such a disservice to not tell the truth to the audience. And I have been fair about this on both sides. It wasn't fair that so many people on the conservative side for years have been guaranteeing their audience that Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton were both in bed together with all of these girls, and Bill Clinton is guilty and he should go to jail. And then, you know, when they get into a position of power, they say, oh, nothing to see here. No indictments, case closed, moved on, forget about, you know, when an audience has been fed for a decade that Jeffrey Epstein and everyone connected to him is guilty. And by the way, I'm not saying that they're not or they aren't. What I'm saying is on our show, you don't hear that. You don't hear guarantees that people are going to jail and all that. We just try to deliver the information to you. So listen to how MSNBC, in an NBC News segment, delivered this information to their viewers.
A couple of weeks ago, Hallie, when really the headlines were dominated by the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, and then the president was sort of trying to change the topic very obviously, and in many different venues, was trying to bring up these unsubstantiated claims about the role he argues former President Obama had in the 2016 election and trying to suppress some information that he says would have been damaging if it had come to light. And so then you had the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, come to the White House briefing room, come to the podium and try to share some of this alleged new evidence. Well, now you have the Attorney General saying that they're going to try to take that information, which, remember, they had announced a strike force to look into what they call this new evidence and try to evaluate it to see if there could be any potential criminal indictments that they would follow. And the thing that matters here is that this is basically a grand jury investigation that's being launched, but that will happen in secret. This is behind closed doors. doors, and it's completely unclear whether it will yield anything new. It's unclear that we will ever learn anything new about it because it could be under seal. But it really does bear repeating. This is looking into something for which there is no evidence to back it up. And it's really, it seems, a politically motivated move to keep the focus on one of the president's clear political foes and talk about basically anything else.
Isn't that remarkable?
It is just astonishing.
That's how NBC reported this story. Yeah. That's why it's important to just everybody stick to the facts on this. Let the facts play out and let events transpire instead of trying to, pull the wool over anybody's eyes or lead people down a trail that they shouldn't be led down if there's not going to actually be a payoff. I'll continue to take my stance that I've always taken on this. I will be shocked if anybody gets arrested. I'm not saying they didn't commit crimes. I'll just be shocked if anybody gets arrested for the crimes that I believe they committed, because I've lived in the last several decades in this country, and I see how justice is delivered. And the fact of the matter is, on one side of the political equation, it never seems like anybody has to pay a criminal penalty for their crimes. So I'll be shocked, pleasantly shocked, but shocked nonetheless. It's 5:54.